I am no stranger to Fire Emblem challenge runs. I've done my fair share of challenges such as draft races, PMUs, Ironmans, you can name it. And I've always really respected the community for pushing these challenges even further. But recently I started asking myself, is there a challenge run that somebody has never completed? So I scoured the internet trying to find the answer. I could not find it anywhere recorded that this type of run has been performed before, particularly for this game. So I decided, hey, what if I did it? Now, this isn't to say that somebody probably hasn't done it. I just have not found an instance of it either recorded or of it documented anywhere, to be honest. But it probably has been done by somebody. And I would love to know if somebody has done this run before, because I also want to know their experience about the strategies that they utilized as well. The challenge run in question is the Shadows of Valentia Blitzkrieg run. However, as an Ironman. You may not think that this is that much harder than a regular Blitzkrieg run, but I can promise you it 100% is. This challenge run was the most difficult challenge run I have ever done in the history of Fire Emblem. Partially because it combines basically two aspects of challenge runs. One is an Ironman, where I can't reset no matter what, and two is the fact that I have to go fast in order to reach the Blitzkrieg limit of the game. Obviously this was done on hard mode. I also added the challenge of not being able to retreat because it can easily be exploited to manipulate a certain specific amount of maps, and no DLC. I'm going to break down these segments by parts. The one thing I'm going to be focusing on a lot too is there are general rules that you have to apply. Number one is you almost never want to double back unless it's for a specific instance, which I'll cover later. And number two is you want to try to avoid all unnecessary encounters as possible, except for one or two that you actually want to trigger in order to allow promotions to occur. Also, remember to keep a track of all of this. The game doesn't do a good job at keeping track of your turns, so I made a spreadsheet in which I recorded every single encounter I had and all the fights I had, how many turns it took in order for me to keep track of what it was. If this is your first time completing a Blitzkrieg run, it will pop up in the end. Congratulations, you've gotten the Blitzkrieg award or whatever. But for me, since this wasn't the first time I completed a Blitzkrieg run, it doesn't pop up at the end, so I had to keep track of all of it to make sure I was below the 500 turn count. For Act 1, it is very important that you try and minimize the low turn counts early on. So you really want Alm and Lucas to get a lot of battles in. But it is also really important for you to be able to promote Gray, Tobin, Cliff, and Faye by the time you reach the first shrine. So for that purpose, you actually kind of want to have enough experience on each of them, promote instantly upon arriving. This will make the rest of the pathway moving forward a lot easier, particularly the next chapter in which you face the Leather Shield Merc. For the trainees promotion, I recommend this because I believe it is honestly the most efficient way to do it. Tobin is very good in Archer or Mage, and albeit his strength growth is a little bit low, it doesn't really matter when you have the Killer Bow. But since everybody else is better fit in other classes than Tobin, I prefer to have Tobin in Mage just because of the fact that you get early access to Excalibur. Now, do I think this is his best class overall? No, I don't. But I think that out of all the trainees, he's the easiest to sacrifice in order to do this. I just do think that he is the most reliable to complete a specific task, and that's all that you need in a Blitzkrieg. Like, you need specific and reliability in an Ironman. Cliff is absolutely phenomenal as a Myrmidon. He will destroy the game. He is the reason that my run was successful at all. Cliff is just very, very powerful. His growths are fantastic. The Myrmidon bases bump him up so that his low starting base stats don't really matter at all. And it kind of rounds him out so that you can basically carry the rest of the game with him, including part 1 all the way to part 4. And Gray, you can really make him another Myrmidon if you want, but I went the option of an Archer so that I had 2 Archers because Archers are really good and Killer Bow spam is really good as well. So I went Gray Archer option. I do recommend Faye as a Cleric, not because I think it's her best class, but because the utility of Cleric is just unmatched in this game, particularly in terms of what she can bring. And in Rescue, that is very important for part 4 with Nui Baba, and just having a second healer with Physic is incredible. So the most important thing to note about this is that if you can reliably get Lucas to level 7 prior to reaching Desai's Gate, it makes it a lot easier. If you don't, you have to rely on the shield in conjunction with Lucas to tank a specific part of it. You also kind of want to make sure that you get Python and start feeding experience into him as well. And you want Cliff to do the majority of the combat for this first part of the game, particularly because of the existence of the lightning sword, which is such a powerful weapon and can really put people within killing range or just outright one-round people, including stronger enemies later on such as Bercoot and Fernan. So this is kind of really the important aspect, is to use Cliff with that lightning sword to sweep as long as possible. You also want to give some levels to but ultimately he's not that important for this. He is good, he will contribute, he will help, but he is not the most important character on this route by a long shot. So, and his hero bases are good enough that you can pump him with some stat boosters later and he'll be fine for the end of the game. The most important character on part 1, because it's going to become relevant later on, is actually Clive. Before part 1 ends, you want to make sure that you give Clive at least 1 level. The reason why is because he will now be able to reach Paladin, and regardless or not if he levels speed, he will be bumped up to 8 base speed. You want to skip the boost for the fountains in the first part of the game. Why? Because you want to give all 3 speed fountains to Clive. With this speed threshold, he now has 11 speed, and when he wields the Rider's Bane, is capable of doubling almost every single enemy cavalier in the game up until part 4 or very late part 3. Particularly also because Clive has enough bulk to reliably be able to survive successive turns of combat. This is one of the few scenarios in which I actually think an Ironman and a Blitzkrieg have different approaches. With the Blitzkrieg, naturally, you would use the turnwheel if something went wrong. So it doesn't really make sense to invest into Clive if you have Matilda right there for the parts that you need. So if you decided to go with the Matilda sweep, you could just do that, and she could do the same thing that Clive could do in a specific part of the game, but she would have the risk of dying due to her low base HP and lower defense. But Clive can reliably survive this more, and because of that, he's a character that sees a lot more value in this particular challenge that combines the Blitzkrieg with an Ironman. Super interesting thing from a meta perspective, in my opinion. So make sure you give Clive the 3 speed from the fountain, and make sure you have him promoted, and basically whoever you can promote you should, but you don't have to double back to promote anybody. Just make sure you try to maximize your experience gains so that you don't have to incur more combats in order to promote. Just try to promote as it happens. By the end of part 1, you will go into Zofia Castle, and you can pick up all the items there, except for 1 steel lance in a specific spot. This is super important to avoid this steel lance, because when Celica arrives through her route, she will be able to pick up the steel lance and create an early silver lance, which is going to be super important for Pala or Katria later on. Celica's part is very interesting because there's a lot of RNG components that can kind of screw you over. But the person you want to feed the most XP to in this part, if possible, is probably Saber for the beginning arts, because you want him to reach Dreadfighter as fast as possible. Unironically, for the run that I completed, I didn't even get a Dreadfighter Saber, which was bad play on my part, honestly. I probably could have done a little bit faster if I had just focused more XP on him. But there is one guy that has a very good application early on that will definitely assist your run, and I recommend this. If you instantly pump all speed fountains into Bowie, he now has a pretty good base speed and is able to avoid a bunch of doubles, along with being able to double as well and having the best bulk out of the initial mages. Not only that, Bowie with the leather shield is able to tank on the chapter where you recruit Leon by just yeeting him in the center and allowing him to eat most shots. He will be able to survive and reliably kill or chip everybody around in such a manner that you can then rescue Leon without him dying at all. And this is very important because Leon is the most important character in the game. If you lose Leon, you should just give up instantly. There's no if and or buts, just stop, start again. Leon is way too valuable for you to let go. He is crucial and instrumental to perform some of the hardest parts of the game in the fastest manner possible. It is just not worth it. So saving him is of your utmost priority, even if it incurs somebody else dying. When it comes to after you recruit Leon, you don't want to go to the Dragon's Fountain until you've achieved Seraphim. So you can go ahead and bypass that until you get Seraphim, which comes later on, and Invoke as well, because Invoke is going to be very important from Jenny. Jenny's also another character I would recommend resetting if you lose, because she's just very valuable early on and up until part 3. But you definitely want to be able to be focusing experience on Saber and on Leon by this point in the game. Valbar does see some pretty good usages in this part, particularly because he can tank a bunch of them and not die in retaliation. This is particularly good for maps with chokeholds. So If this was not an Ironman setting, I would have definitely just yeeted Saber and Valbar would never have seen use at all, which if you look at my Blitzkrieg run, he never sees use at all. But since this was an Ironman, the consistency of Valbar being able to tank stuff actually allowed him to be much more useful early on so that I can get focused XP on different characters. This did, however, hamper into Saber's experience gain, but at the same time, it allowed for a more consistent, reliable way to not die. Once you get Seraphim, you want to go back into the fountain, kill the dragons, and then go in and get the items. Get the Blessed Sword, because it's good, it's very strong, it's also a healing item. And you also want to get the fountain for res. But you want to give this to Leon, so that Leon gets the most benefit of being able to tank mages, because he can from his ridiculous range. So you give the res fountains to him. You do not touch the experience fountains at all. That is for Pala later on in the game. The rest of part 2 isn't too complicated, particularly the mage map is the most challenging one, but if for some reason you super fed Leon and you already have Sniper Leon by that point, it helps a lot. So for part 3, there are some pretty efficient manners to go about this. Number 1 is you have the Rider's Bane, so there's going to be a lot of Rider's Bane sweeping, and you have the Lightning Sword, which means you can tank a lot of enemies on enemy phase and kill them or leave them very low. So we're going to be doing that a lot with Cliff and Clive. I recommend that as quickly as possible, you should try and go and defeat Desai. Why? Well, if you defeat Desai, you avoid extra spawns on the map. Extra spawns on the map are the things that are going to eat up the most amount of time. Also, the enemies are not weak. They're actually pretty solid, and they scale as the game progresses. So once you complete part 3, you're going to be spawning some really strong enemies for the other half. And since our strategy specifically involved completing part 3 as quickly as possible, avoiding more encounters is always better. The only situation in which I recommend you hitting the wait function in case a horse comes out from Desai is if it winds up on the same territory as Bercoot, because it creates a very difficult setup for you to deal with on a very small map. Otherwise, I'd say it's always almost more efficient to fight 2 groups of enemies on the same, even if it's a regular map challenge, just because of the fact you can reduce the amount of turns. Once you defeat Desai, you can now double back and forge. And this forge is probably the most important forge of the game because it's going to give you the strongest tools you need. The first thing you're going to do is forge a killer bow to the maximum that you can. You're going to sell basically everything you can or as much as you can to forge a killer bow. And if some gold is left over or some coins are left over, to forge a Rider's Bane as much as possible. You can get away with forging it just to +1 or +2 for the Rider's Bane early on. By the end of the game, you'll forge it to +3 anyway. But the killer bow, the more forges you got on it, the better. Python and your other archer of choice from early on will be able to trivialize a lot of things early on due to Hunter's Volley spam, including some enemies that are pretty dangerous in this part of the game, mages, etc, etc. Once you have forged, you're just going to beeline it all the way to the end. And a side note, you also want to give almost every single attack stat booster to Silk so that her warp range increases. Even if she doesn't reach Saint, it doesn't matter because you just want to be able to take advantage of that warp and her high attack stat to push stuff forward. Once you get to Tatara's Gate, you want to basically push as well, try to eliminate all the enemies if possible while trying to rescue Delthea. Unfortunately for me, Delthea got crit by a 7% chance and she died. Since she never became a blue unit, she never gets the chance to be revived by the fountains at all. In my original Blitzkrieg run though, Delthea had a lot of value because she was able to bait a lot of the witches and also was able to use the mage ring in conjunction to use aura and hit some of the bulkier enemies later on. So I think Delthea does have a lot of value in a regular Blitzkrieg with the turnwheel, but in an Ironman, she's a little bit of a liability, and again, this could happen and you just don't get her. Once you complete part 3, double back and forge everything you want. Again, you want to make it so that the least amount of enemies spawn as possible on the map. This means that every single time you have to do a forge or go somewhere, you want to make sure you do everything you need to do and then leave and go all the way to the end and then only double back when everything is clear. By this point in time, once you finish part 3, you have a peddler that's available. One thing you want to do is take that killer bow that you forged and send it over to Celica's route. This is very important. This killer bow is going to bounce back and forth between this army. So I named it the Super Bow because I know that it's the bow that I'm going to have to pass back and forth and I don't get confused. If you want to, once you complete part 3, you can double back and complete all of Alm's side quests if you so desire. But there's not really a need to, barring the Lima Amulet, which can give you some good stuff. Now on Celica's route, you want to walk in with that killer bow already primed on Leon and completely start to demolish everything in that route. The first map, you're going to get Pala and Katria. You just want to push forward, try to end it as quickly as possible and get the advantage of that. By this point in time, there should be already some map spawns that are coming down to face you. In particular, the bow knights from the very top are very, very dangerous. I would recommend you do not let them become 2-on-1 terrain. 2 of those bow knight groups on 1 terrain will demolish you, particularly because this early on, nobody in the army of Celica can really survive a round of combat with those guys that isn't named like Valbar or one of the mercenaries due to speed. After you get Pala and Katria though, because you want to double back and get them immediately, you want to immediately double back even more. The XP fountains plus the apple will bring Pala to level 11 right off the bat if you desire to do so. I actually prefer to go 9 to 10 naturally so that the experience gains aren't as nerfed, and then I feed her the apple plus the fountain so she can reach level 12 and instantly promote, and now we have a Falco Knight Pala that can tank a lot of stuff for the rest of the game. So now you double back up. You don't need to go into and recruit Atlas if you don't want to, but I do recommend going left and getting into the village because there is a forge there, and this is where we're going to forge the Silver Lance. You might as well pick up Atlas, but to be honest, I wouldn't deploy Atlas at all until we're at a shrine that we can promote him as. Once you get your Silver Lance forge and anything else you would like to forge there, you're going to make a right, go out, and start making your way over to Greece Citadel. This is one of the maps that is considered the most annoying map in the game because of the fact that there are a bunch of archers in the little area and you can't reliably push in without getting overwhelmed. If you give Leon the Pegasus cheese plus the killer bow, Leon will be able to trivialize this map with some healing support. It is actually ridiculously easy to do because he will have enough speed to be able to double everybody in there and also be able to kill reliably on enemy phase. This will significantly reduce your turn count. This is one of the few reasons, but the most important reason, as to why losing Leon is basically a restart. He saves so much time on this map that it's a joke. It's a joke. He is basically the carry for this run. Once you have cleared out this map, you're going to be tempted to go into the next area and recruit Jesse. Do not do this. If you do this, they will spawn a new set of enemies that from Greece Citadel, and you're going to encounter more battles. You don't want that. You want to just push and defeat Greece as quickly as possible to stop reinforcements coming out of there. You can choose if you would rather have Sonya or Dean. I think Dean is the superior unit, but Sonya has witches on her map, and the witches have a really weird AI that warp and just kill people left and right with no real reason, and I didn't want to deal with that in an Ironman, so I went Dean's route instead to just kill him, get the Brave Sword, and recruit Sonya. It just so happens I also had lost May by this point, so Sonya was a good fill-in for that. Now you want to reach Greece Citadel. It's not actually that difficult. You're just basically going to apply the same principle that you've been doing with Leon so far to everything that has incredible range. Just make sure that he doesn't take too much damage and die. And remember that Pala has Banish, which does effective damage to monsters. So you can literally throw her in a group of monsters that have low speed, and she will destroy everything with her high speed and effective damage and the Silver Lance, or leave everything almost close to dead. She is super valuable because of that, because of the Banish skill against these monsters. Now you've defeated Grief, you can go in, get all the stuff that's in there. You can double back, get Jesse and all the stuff that's in there. Although Jesse doesn't really matter, you're not going to really level him at all. He's not really that good compared to Kamui Saber. And you're going to go up into the Sylvan Shrine. So in my case, I just kept going forward because I was like, I'll double back at any point and revive whoever I lost and do the quest there. I just wanted to stop the reinforcements. So I did that. I also lost Kamui on the very last map of the third act, which was unfortunate, but I double backed and I revived everybody. I got Mei and Kamui back through the fountains that are in the game, along with completing the shrine there and getting all the loot inside while incurring almost no combat at all. Now comes the dreaded Act 4 part of the game, which is pretty challenging, but there are ways to minimize this as well. So I went through Celica's route first. Once you get into the forest, you want to just grab all the loot without having any encounters, promote whoever you have to promote, because you're not really going to be doubling back unless super necessary. With Halcyon, you're going to let Halcyon promote Om so that you can promote him instantly when the time comes on his route, but you're going to want to forge all the items you had so far and just upgrade everything. It is very important that you have 2 killer bows at this point, because that super bow that you held on to for so long, is going to go back to Alm's side. For your side, you're going to hold on to the weaker killer bow. And the reason why I did this is because Atlas can be promoted into an archer, and he will destroy everything just like Leon. He won't be as strong, and he'll do it more on player phase. But once he starts getting some levels in, because he's just going to chip naturally and do a ton of damage because he has huge attack, he can and will probably reach a sniper before you even complete this forest area, which is what happened to me. So having the weaker killer bow on this side is better, because Leon will probably have way more levels and Atlas has way more attack. Now, after this map, you have a couple of really difficult maps. In particular, the one with the spam from the guy in the center and just consistent gargoyle spam, super high speed, and all the enemies are threatening and dread fighters. This map for me was really difficult. It actually led to Jenny dying and me having to double back later on to use my last revival on her to get her back, because Jenny is very, very important with her invoke functions for the final boss in the game. So it's kind of like important to have Jenny by this point, along with Duma Tower, because Duma Tower has some pretty threatening enemies that Jenny can kind of bait out with these summons, so she's super important to have there. Didn't kill Jeddah, however, because I really couldn't punch through his insane defense, because he has the Draco shield at this point. So I just waited him out the 7 turns so he would disappear, and I just cleared the map. That was just easier for me to do. Items I recommend sending over before you do Duma Tower are the Mage Ring for Alm's side, so he has 2 Mage Rings and now has increased range on his mage attacks. The Killer Bow, or you can send the Rapier over for Alm, which is what I did. I forged the Rapier with Celica's money, and then I sent it over for Alm on his side. And the Rapier is super important for Cliff, but I'll get to that later. And now you're back in control of Alm's army after Celica's army disappears. With Alm, you want to instantly double back and promote to hero, and then you want to go and continue your path forward. Now, one thing that's very important is that if you sent the Rapier over from Celica's side, you don't have to double back again and reforge more stuff. But I opted to give Cliff this forged Rapier that we had at this point in the game. And the Rapier did a lot of work. It is very powerful for Cliff in particular. Some people argue that it's better to give him the Zweihander due to Tiger Stance or Silver Sword just because of its high might and access to other skills that come later on. I don't really agree with this. I think that the Rapier is probably the best weapon at this part of the game. It will allow him to severely cripple armored enemies and horse enemies, which are the majority of the enemies that you see there that have high bulk. And you just kind of want to deal with them unless it's through magic. Not that he can't do it physically, but this will greatly assist in it and reliably assist in it, along with not affecting his speed, which he needs in order to be able to double some of the dangerous Dread Masters at this part of the game. Now, when you reach the option to go to Nui Baba's abode or to go left and defeat Zeke, I went and killed Nui Baba. I also got Tatiana, who's very useful for the end of the game, because you can reach level 4 with her and get Fortify to counter the upheaval from Duma. It's very easy to do that. It doesn't require a lot of energy to get her to level 4. It also allows you to get Zeke and to make the chapter that you recruit Zeke a lot easier. So I definitely do recommend going and killing Nui Baba. But you have to take into consideration a couple of things. Nui Baba is plagued by witches, and witches are very nasty in this game. Witches will basically teleport in and just kill somebody that they can kill. Like whoever they can attack, they will. There's no rhyme or reason to their AI. I still haven't understood it till this day. But one thing that I did learn during these playthroughs is that you always have to see how much speed they have when they teleport. So if they have like about 10 speed, but they're carrying fire, fire has 3 weight, which means they have 7 speed. So if you're going to deploy anybody on this map, you have to either make sure that they have more than 7 speed, or 7 speed on the dot, or that they have enough resistance to survive 2 successive rounds of combat with these mages. As you can see, Alm's route has basically nobody that has resistance at all, barring Silk. I made the mistake of deploying Faye in one of the earlier chapters, and she got completely obliterated by a witch that just poured it in and killed her in 1 round of combat. And I didn't even do the math right. And ironically, I didn't deploy Gray or any of the knights because I knew they would get shredded. But I forgot about Faye and she died. But it's okay. We revive her at the fountain later. God bless the fountains, man. You kind of want to move through and try to bait as much of the witches out as possible with Cliff, or somebody that has good resistance due to the Dreadfighter class, or even Matilda, so that you can stop them from teleporting. It doesn't completely stop them. Sometimes they'll warp even though, but it's more likely that I've seen them actually attack a person in their range than to warp. And it's always better for you to control who they attack than for them to just randomly warp in and kill someone. This is also the reason I gave Alm some of the resistance boosts in one of the earlier fountains because I wanted to make sure that they would never target Alm in successive rounds of combat because that could lead to an instant game over. I always wanted to make sure that people around him had less res so that they would prefer to attack that person than to attack Alm. After completing Zeke's part, you want to push forward to take advantage of your long-range attacks, including with baiting with your archers, so that you can pull these guys out from the most difficult chapters like the Last Bastion and so on and so forth. You just want to basically try to move quick but reliably. Cliff, again, will sweep a lot of these enemies, so it's good to do that. And there is one last fountain before you go into the final chapter. It has defense on it. I just gave it to Alm, in particularly because Alm's going to face a series of final battles by himself. So him having good defense is kind of reliable. The enemies there are actually threatening and kind of scary. So make sure you get some good defense on Alm if possible. Feed him defense boosters, feed him the defense fountains if you have it. HP fountains are pretty good on him too. Or you can equip him with a shield to trivialize the damage from the enemies. There is that too. Rudolph is not that hard. There is actually a very easy way to cheese this map in 2 turns. You want to warp Cliff to this spot in particular or your Dreadmaster of choice. They will bait out all the enemies. Then Rudolph will move. Then on the second turn, you can just converge on Rudolph with everybody and he will die. It's just how it works. You will be able to kill him, especially if you have a rapier because it does effective damage to him. It's fast, it's quick, it's easy. It's the most efficient way to do it. You don't want to fight anybody else. Just warp your Swordmaster in there. Just warp your Dread Fighter in there. Let Rudolph come to you. Blow him up. Quick and easy. Once you're done with this, you want to go back and double back and forge everything you want to do. Get all the fountains, all the XP, yada, yada, yada. Whatever you want to do, you got to do it before the ending of this. Also take advantage of that nobody spawns. What I did was I went and forged a 3-star Blessed Bow. This is very good for Alm, in particular for the extra battles that he's about to face, because he will do effective damage to everything he fights and also heals himself at the beginning of the phase. So it's very good to do this. Bercoot's map isn't super hard. It is hard, but a lot of it goes around the fact that Renea is up. If you instantly kill Renea, though, a lot of the problems go away because the witches don't get spawned, Bercoot loses a lot of his bonuses for combat, and you just basically remove one of the highest threats in the game right off the bat. And I do that turn 1. I then rescue the person out. This is why rescue is so good on Fae. So it's just easier to deal with that in general. You wipe out the remaining enemies, and then you can easily deal with Bercoot after. Not too difficult. You also get access to Mycen at this point, who is fantastic, has 18 defense, can wall off basically most of the enemies he's going to fight in this part. Like, this dude is ridiculous. Like, he's ridiculous strong, has really good attack stat, really good defense. Once you defeat Bercoot, you really shouldn't have any more battles if you are trying to avoid most of the battles beyond the one that Alm fights against the enemies that he is forced to fight anyway, and the final battle. For Alm in particular, I recommend the Blessed Bow once again, so you can just try to knock people down. It does have good crit too, so it can reliably crit people and kill enemies and reduce their enemy density on player phase. The first map of the 3 is the most dangerous. If Alm takes a lot of damage, you want to eat a provision that's going to heal him up to full, so he can fight against the enemies on the next turn, and so on and so forth. Just eat provisions to make sure he's healthy. The Blessed Bow is definitely one of the best items in this part of the game. For the final map, I'm going to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter if you deploy any of the calves at all, because they're not going to have an easy time getting in there and fighting stuff. They might be able to go through the right side, but it's kind of hard for them to finagle in. So I actually would recommend deploying maybe a Mycen and another cav, somebody that has like good defense, and then just deploying Dread Fighters, the Flyers, and Mages. Like, that's really all you want. And Cliff, obviously, so Cliff can deal with the left side by himself. Luckily, the reinforcement witches on this map are kind of weak, so you don't have to worry about them just warping in and killing someone, but you still should warp someone in, take out the main witch, rescue them out if possible to avoid extra turn incursions due to the abundance of enemies they're going to spawn. Realistically, if you kill the 3 guys on the left and the 2 witches, the map has now become a lot easier because you only have to deal with Jeddah. Duma himself can be complicated if you don't have a strong Alm. You kind of want to damage him as much as possible beforehand until you finally kind of push Alm in and kill him. One thing to note is that he will not act on the turn that he does upheaval. So there's no scenario in which he upheavals and then attacks. He will always upheaval and that will consume his action. However, the enemies around him will move after he uses upheaval. So upheaval comes first and then enemies move. So just note that. Tatiana is very good to counter this, so keep that in mind as well. Now, the hard part about Duma is that you almost have to reliably be able to land a crit in order to consistently kill him. So you're going to have to swing with Alm a couple of times. And by the end, Duma is slapping him with a lot of damage, like upwards of 42 for me at least. So I needed to make sure to top him off consistently and keep him healed up. So I recommend the same for you. Try to make sure that he's high health because him dying results in a game over. I didn't even try to attack with Celica because she probably was going to get demolished anyway. And I didn't want my second game over condition up there. So you can try to abuse supports around Alm and then push in and kill the boss. That's a way to, but you want to kind of rely on that crit so that you can get that final blow. And now once Duma is gone, that's it. You've done it. Congratulations. You've now completed your Blitzkrieg Ironman of Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia on hard mode. So what did I learn from this? I really like this challenge run. It was by far the most difficult challenge run I've ever done in the history of Fire Emblem. The combination of a Blitzkrieg plus an Ironman made it so that I had to move quickly and also get punished if I didn't plan correctly. Not only that, I had to deal with the randomness of events occurring from the witches and random things that could go wrong with crits. That added an extra layer of difficulty. The key to this though was to make sure that I knew what I needed at specific points of the game. So planning this out was actually very smart and allowed me to complete this run. An extremely challenging run. Again, like I said before, I don't know if anybody has completed it before or has a documented completion of this. I looked around, couldn't find it, even on people that I know do extremely hard challenge runs, and I didn't see them there. But I do recommend people try this challenge run. I actually put this challenge out to the community. I want to see more of the big streamers try this because it is actually very, very hard. It's not easy to complete this run at all. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this run, what you thought about this challenge run indeed. If you found any other challenge run that's as difficult as this, or that you think another challenge run is harder, I would love to hear about that in your comments. Or if you completed this run, I would like to hear about how you did it as well. Thank you guys so much for watching again. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. See you guys next time. Bye bye.